Yeah, a warm welcome from me, and this is quite an interesting talk for me because I will rant a lot about my industry. And to make this not so offending for you, I thought just to make you an offer, the person who counts the most Baldur's Gate 3 quotes that I shared during the talk will get a coffee from me. And yeah, as there are or there is at least one other interesting talk, I prepared a too long didn't listen slide so that you have the chance to leave this room and say, I attended and I got the main message. So what is the main message I want to share with you? The first thing is that I learned in the last year I counted, and I work now for 25 years in IT industry, is that software is the main driver for bureaucracy in this world. The second thing is we have a lot of people in software engineering that constantly refuses to learn concepts from social sciences. That is the reason why a lot of people reinvent ideas from social sciences over and over and over again in software engineering. You can repeat this over for max int or something like that. And the last thing is that I learned during the 5 terms that I studied sociology, we miss a very important concept from social sciences in software engineering, and this is the concept of contingency. I will explain during the talk what this is, and maybe you agree afterwards with me. A small disclaimer. First thing, models and truth. I try to describe some models that you might use or may not use if you don't like them to see things in the world and to look at things. I will not tell you any truth. There are real experts in telling truth, all on the company formerly known as Twitter. I'm not one of them. So I will not tell you any truth. I must just share some ideas, some models from social sciences. The next thing is ambiguity. I use terms, and I use terms in a certain context. These terms might have different meanings in other contexts, and I don't want to waste the short time that I have in a talk to address all the possible meanings of terms in other contexts. So when you see something different, we can, of course, discuss that, write a question, let's discuss it in the break or something like that. And the last thing is, well, my time slot decreased from 60 minutes to 35 minutes. So I will simplify things. Well, I hope I do not oversimplify things. So now let's start with the real content. First of all, I want to share with you 3 concepts that help me understanding what happens in social sciences and how we can use social sciences and what they are for and why they are relevant. Maybe you see some parallels in these concepts with concepts that we also have in IT, at least regarding the results that come out of understanding these concepts. The first concept is the so-called GAS or SAG concept from Thorngate. I found it in a book by Carl Weick, The Social Psychology of Organizing. A very interesting book written in the 70s, successfully ignored by IT people since it was printed. Weick referred to this concept by Thorngate, who describes a very interesting view on how concepts can be written, on how ideas can be described. And what Thorngate said, that we can, when we create concepts, we can only fulfill 2 of the 3 dimensions that you see here on the circle. We can either have concepts that are general and accurate, we can have concepts that are accurate and simple, or we can have concepts that are general and simple. Maybe you have heard about the cup theorem someday. Well, every year a student comes to me and says he or she has proven the cup theorem wrong by just ignoring something, and this is, I don't know why, but it happens. And every day, a software engineer comes to me and explains me that he's proven Thorngate's gas or SAG watch wrong. That's quite interesting. The concept that I will explain to you are all in the general and accurate section. So they are not simple. It would be a very complicated talk that I will give you. But looking on things that we do as interaction with people for who we create software systems, for who we create software architectures, having this concept in mind is a quite helpful thing. The next concept is, well, the most complicated concept I know, but the most valuable concept I know. It's the concept of a system. And yeah, that makes me angry from time to time. Because, well, there's a very foggy, nebulous idea of system that many people have in mind when they talk about system. That's why whenever two things relate to each other, the people talking about these two things, well, we do systems thinking or something like that. But in the social sciences, we have quite strict and quite well-defined concepts of what systems are, especially what social systems are. And well, let's call him a guru. The guru of systems thinking, of systems theory in the social sciences is Niklas Luhmann. Quite hard to read for many people, but I love his writings. And he has a very strict, very clear concept of what a system is. And the interesting thing is when you use his concept, you can nearly explain anything that can be seen as a system. What he says about a system is, the first, a system is the difference between a system and the environment. And here we come to a very interesting thing. Sociologists love recursion. A lot of definitions in sociology are based on recursion. And it's quite interesting that you cannot define a system without having an idea of the system, what a system is. So how can we describe, how can we look on a system? And for that, we need two other definitions, especially for social systems. What was the focus of Niklas Luhmann? Niklas Luhmann said the relevant thing in social systems is communication, and communication is the result of information. So we need a concept of information. And he said information is an information only when it leads to a state change in the system. So I can share a lot of informations with you here on stage. I can tell you, well, this is a MacBook, something, I don't know. That won't make any difference because you obviously can see it. When I tell you, that would be funny, I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, that is an information that maybe change the view that you have from me in some way. Some people say, well, that's quite a tough outing. Some people say, well, this guy is crazy. There are a lot of interpretations that might result in a status change in the social system that we have here in this audience. So information is only an information when a change is the consequence of having it, that it arises. The next thing that Luhmann says is that communication only takes place when information is shared. So when I stay here and say nothing, no communication is shared. Well, you maybe try to interpret my body language in some way, but no auditory communication is shared. No information is transferred from me to you. And then comes the very interesting step. Luhmann says, whenever we think about a social system, and this is important for all the other interpretations, a social system emerges only when communication results from communication. So when communication, the flow of communication stops, the social system does no longer exist. what a lot of people got wrong with this concept is that they describe or try to describe the world as things are systems. But this is not a model where you can use an object is instance of. This is far from what you can use this model for. Systems is a concept that can be helpful to describe things from a certain perspective. So when you think about systems, you can think about more like a create, view, as select from universe. You take aspects from everything and say, under this perspective, I can describe the thing that I observe as a system. For example, a software development team as a social system. That's what we can talk about, or what we can see as a system. Then let's make a step into a term that is more than 6 decades old, but is re-identified, reinvented in the last 3 to 5 years quite often. It's the term of socio-technical systems. Socio-technical systems is becomes more or less a buzzword in the last years, like systems thinking. But socio-technical systems are quite a valuable thing to describe work systems. When you want to see how human-machine interaction changes the way a social system communicates. In a socio-technical system, you have four elements. You have the members, the people, the human beings, who are members of this socio-technical system. These members usually have roles. These roles form a structure. So you can be a developer, you can be a scrum master, product owner, whatever you like. And we have also 2 other things, tasks. The tasks that are related, for example, to a role that I have to fulfill. When I'm a scrum master, I have to count the story points from Jira tickets and so on. So when I'm a member in a socio-technical system and I fulfill a role, some tasks may arise from that role that I have to fulfill as a member. And technology may help me with these tasks. So what I said a few seconds ago with this Jira, this is not really a helpful technology, but a technology quite often used for that. So we can call every software development team a socio-technical system, and we can use an IT department a socio-technical, and so on. The main point that comes along with socio-technical systems is that there is an information in making a system into, or transferring a system into a socio-technical system. And this is a differentiation between a social subsystem and a technical subsystem. When we do not differentiate between these 2 subsystems, there is no value in talking about social technical systems at all, because that is the main thing that makes a social system a socio-technical system. We can differentiate between the technical subsystem and the social subsystem. This is very important for the next thing, and the next thing I want to talk about is bureaucracy. Who of you who loves bureaucracy? Yeah, I also was not a fan of bureaucracy until I studied sociology and got some lectures in administrative sciences, and then I understood you cannot argue against bureaucracy and be a software developer at the same time. This is simply not possible because of how socio-technical systems work. And I try to explain it to you using domain-driven design. In domain-driven design, we have a lot of concepts, and I will, regarding to the time, only focus on the bounded context. The bounded context is one of the most brilliant ideas that we have in domain-driven design. And when we go to the literature, we find a lot of aspects, a lot of definitions, a lot of things that make a bounded context a bounded context. We can say a bounded context is a boundary around the meaning of a model expressed in a ubiquitous language. A bounded context is tailored around a certain purpose, is a boundary around consistent set of rules and definitions, a boundary around a team and responsibilities, and so on. So there are a lot of things that make a bounded context a bounded context. And all of these are quite valid. When we take these ideas, these concepts, and say, well, let's look on our model of a socio-technical system, it's quite obvious that we can describe a bounded context as a socio-technical system. We have a development team, we have members who work in this context. They get roles. When they develop the software, they get some the structure of the development team. When we also include our domain experts and the users, we have a bigger structure, we have more roles, we have more tasks, but we can describe what happens in such a bounded context quite well as a socio-technical system. That is something we can make a check. Interesting is that we can see such a bounded context as two different levels or two different levels of abstraction of a socio-technical system. We can, on the first hand, see a socio-technical system that is the software development team, and the output of this socio-technical system is the software itself. They're using tools, they're using technique for developing the software, and so on. And we can go a step back and say, well, this software as output doesn't make any sense. Nothing is useless as a software nobody uses. So whenever we think about creating a software or developing a software with a team, we want to have some people who use the software. And this is a point where we can extend the socio-technical system and say, well, it makes no sense to talk about the development team as a socio-technical system for themselves without having the people who will use the software in mind. And the software that is created becomes the technology element in the socio-technical system. That leads us to the problem of bureaucracy. In 1922, a book was published, a book by Max Weber. And Max Weber wrote a whole chapter on bureaucracy. I love these writings. They're quite funny to read. And he defined bureaucracy quite well as something that is built upon rules and definitions, that defines responsibilities. He uses in the German version, he uses the term Kompetenzen, which can be translated as competencies, but what he expressed are responsibilities. A bureaucracy fulfills a purpose that is defined by a hierarchy, and it processes documents consistently in a certain domain language. He did not use the term domain language, and he wrote documents, not aggregates. But when you look on what Max Weber described as a bureaucracy, and when you look into what we today describe as bounded context in domain-driven design, well, there are some similarities. And one could think that, well, domain-driven design is quite a perfect implementation of German bureaucracy. This is not a criticism on domain-driven design. I think domain-driven design is, for human-machine interactive systems, the most intelligent way to get to a good architecture. I'm a domain-driven design trainer, so I will not advocate against domain-driven design. But from my point of view, it is very helpful to have a perspective on the methodologies that we use that allows us to communicate with people who have no clue about IT. And yeah, you can see domain-driven design as a socio-technical thing, or a method that helps you from transferring domain behavior from the social subsystem into the technical subsystem. And this is what we do in software engineering. We constantly migrate domain behavior. To make it explicit, software engineering is the process of migrating domain behavior from the social subsystem into the technical subsystem. And when this happens, we lose something. In the social subsystem, we have something that we can call social contracts. Whenever we transfer domain behavior from the social subsystem into the technical subsystem, we lose these social contracts. There are no social communications between the task and the technology. These only happens between the members in the structure. So whenever we go this step, we lose a chance, whenever we implement a certain behavior in software, we lose the chance that human beings are able to influence what is going on in this overall socio-technical system. And this is the reason why the introduction of software systems is quite often experienced as an increase of bureaucracy. And I'm quite sure all of you had once, years ago, months ago, days ago, this moment where somebody who offered a service said, well, I can't help you with that, the system doesn't allow it me. Well, I think I will write a book about this some years in the future, implementing German bureaucracy in the heart of the software. But again, I will not criticize domain-driven design. If you all use domain-driven design, that would be really great. But be aware of what you are doing when you use these methodologies. Be aware what you are doing when you create software, and be aware that when you discuss with your users about what they really want from the software and what is the use case and what are their requirements, that you limit their options whenever you implement something that they did before into a software system. That was the bureaucracy part. Now let's talk about trust. Well, sorry. I'm quite sure all of you have a person you would trust in some way. And well, the term trust is, has been misused during the last years a lot by the crypto bros. They did not understand how trust works in social systems. But I try to give you an idea of how trust works in social systems and how you can use it to improve the way how you create and evolve and develop software architectures. What is trust? Trust is a mechanism to decrease social complexity, not more and not less. But why and how? That's the interesting question. How does trust decrease social complexity? Well, to understand this, we need to understand how trust evolves, how trust is created, and how trust emerges from something. When we have a social system that is built up on communication, we as human beings have a very interesting ability that distinguishes us from other life forms on this planet. We can communicate about things in the future. We can make promises. We can make suggestions about what happens tomorrow. And this is the foundation of trust. We are able to communicate about tomorrow and the days after. Trust evolves, resulting from that, when opportunities to break trust are not taken. Again, we have a recursive definition. So whenever you agree with a person on something, no matter what it is, but whenever you agree with a person on something that you will meet tomorrow or something like that, and this happens, your trust will grow. When that not happens, when the person breaks trust, well, your trust will maybe decrease, maybe not grow. Depends on how important it was for you. But more or less, you can say whenever a chance or an opportunity to break trust is not taken, your trust increases. you build experience, and this experience is the foundation that you need to collaborate with other human beings. This implementation or this use of trust for collaboration has been very intensively researched by Robert Axelrod. His book, The Evolution of Cooperation, is quite a head burner, so read it. I don't want to share a comprehension now, but read this book. This book explains a lot about why human beings are able to create organizations and collaborate even if there is no trust at the beginning of the collaboration. When you take the research of Robert Axelrod and the idea of how trust evolves and mix them a little bit, you will come to the conclusion that trust is something that is experience-based. It is an experience-based expectation that limits your social complexity that you have to maintain. And the expectation is that a person is willing to collaborate tomorrow. So whenever we have the expectation that a person is willing to collaborate tomorrow with us and the day after tomorrow and so on, then we have a reason to build trust. Then we have a reason to create trust. And the interesting thing is, when we think about that, when we imagine we work in a software development team as a person, the software development team is part of an organization. And a new person joins that team. The mechanism of trust is really powerful because I don't need to trust that person as an individual from my side. I will not share my head with that person. Never. When I meet this person the first time, that's a no-go. But I trust my organization, and I'm willing to collaborate with my organization tomorrow and next week and so on. And my expectation is that everybody who is hired from my organization is willing to collaborate with the organization tomorrow and next week and the month after and so on. So we can, we can use organizations, for example, as a proxy of trust. And when you understand that the trust in the team evolves when we now collaborate individually together, when we create some cool code, when we learn from each other and so on, that is not the only thing that you need. You need, for starting collaboration, what you need for starting collaboration is the experience that everybody who joins the team is willing to collaborate with the organization that I am a member of tomorrow and the day after. When you understand this, you can successfully operate a mafia and run any other organization you like. Not everybody wants to run a mafia. Some people want to do other things, but this is how trust works. And this is a very interesting thing because it decouples trust from mistrust. And this is something I wrote an article about that some years ago. That when we talk about trust, it's something that has no relation to mistrust. We can have a system that is on the personal level built up on mistrust, but when we trust the organization, it works quite well. And this is exactly what happens in a system like the mafia. So. We are running out of time. I had another topic prepared, the topic of self-organization, but there was a panel discussion yesterday. I had no chance to listen to it, but I will make it short. The question was in the panel discussion regarding this. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. And Tim and me, we discussed a little bit before the panel discussion, and I thought, why do we ask a question where the only correct answer is obviously, of course, no. And that's quite an interesting thing. And to make it short, I don't know what was discussed yesterday, but to give you a different perspective, maybe on what was discussed, the perspective that I want to share with you is we have quite a strict interpretation of self-organization in social sciences. And when we look from that, a situation where the term self-organization is quite often used, or the self-organized teams that develop a shared vision, that develop on a common architecture, on a common thing. And well, when I look to that interpretation of self-organization from the perspective of a sociologist, I would say, well, self-organizing teams with a common goal are like a shared nothing architecture with a common database. To transfer it into the IT world. The interesting thing is, human beings found organizations, teams, whatever you like, in order to be able to achieve goals despite the ubiquity of self-organization. Self-organization is everywhere. It just happens. It's not steered or guided or something like that. So when we talk about self-organization, we often use it in a wrong way, and we often refer to the wrong topics. What is often meant when we talk about self-organization are somehow aligned teams and organizations that are able to make local decisions, that are self-governed, self-managed, self-leading, and so on. I thought it was Heckman who wrote this quite interesting sub-definitions or alternative definitions. And I would sleep better if more people talk about self-managed or self-governed teams instead of self-organized teams. What we need in software development are teams who are able to make local decisions in well-defined frameworks. Otherwise, everything would collapse more or less. So, what could be the conclusion of that? Some things that I learned when I talked about and learned from social scientists in the last years. We need a stronger link to social sciences in the software engineering education. This is something that, from my point of view, is really missing. I would be happy if the first term in each computer science study would ensure that people get at least a basic knowledge about how social systems work. I would also be happy if we have would introduce a concept of contingency, like it is described in the social sciences, into the or make it part of a educational concept in software engineering, because that is inherent in how we can look on, how we need to look on social systems. And last but not least, I would really recommend that when we use terms in software engineering, we should be aware of how these terms are defined and used in other topics of science or in other contexts. And that would be my conclusion for this talk. And now have some fun in Faerun or wherever you want to be next time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. While listening to your talk, I was so much concentrated on or focused on your talk that I actually did miss a lot of questions that had been there. So yeah, quite a lot of things that are pretty interesting. One of them, somebody actually understood the concept of recursion in social sciences and asked the question, he thinks that the Gas theorem actually is both, or it's all the three things, general, accurate and simple, and therefore a contradiction to itself. What do you think about that?
Well, yes. It is, in fact, not simple. That's the problem. When you read about what Thorngate wrote about it and what Carl Weick thought about it and wrote in addition, you understand that this concept is really not simple to understand because it's counterintuitive. I discuss a lot with people about that, and they all come with the same conclusion that they say, well, so let's just make a fundamental thing that is simple, understandable, accurate, and that can be used everywhere. And there are some theories around that seem to be simple, accurate, and general. One is, for example, the systems theory by Niklas Luhmann. You can describe the system theory in 5 lines. Another example is the Agile Manifesto. It's quite short, it's quite simple in writing, but it is not simple in adopting to it. So there is some first sight simplicity in many concepts, but what is below the iceberg is much more and much more complex and complicated. And this is also true for Thorngate's paradigm of general, accurate, and simplicity.
Okay, thank you. Then there's one, or I think maybe it was even 2 questions around the question, could we somehow implement social contracts into our software systems?
That's quite a good question. And it's a similar discussion as with the artificial intelligence topic. I would say no, because the social contracts are, let's say, communication artifacts that exist between human beings. You need a system that is able to take this communication artifact, see the information contained in that communication artifact, and responds to it. But this would mean that a software system need to be able to answer to nearly anything, because in the social part of the system, nearly any communication could happen. We can narrow that, and we can say, well, when we have a car manufacturer, it's quite rare that people or a team decides to produce beer or something like that. So we can narrow that a little bit, but when you think about the human-machine interaction as the social, or as something that a socio-technical system describes, then I would say we can only partially implement social contracts in software. We are doing that from time to time, but it's not something that we can do in general. I have no idea. Maybe in 20 years we have a possibility, but at the moment I would say I have no idea how this could happen.
It's an interesting field to find new things. I'm just looking here. Are there too many questions, really? I'm going to choose, Are there any concepts from social science you have seen which have not yet been adopted or even mentioned in our industry? I think somebody's looking for the next big thing.
I don't know. We need to define the term adopted. I would say nearly everything that somebody wrote as a brain dump in social sciences has been misused in IT for some reason. There are a lot of things where we could benefit from adopting things. I would not say I don't have a catalog of all things that are ever thought in social sciences, but yeah, maybe there are some things that are not adopted yet, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. One fun question in between. Do you seriously enjoy reading Luhmann and Weber?
Yes.
Very good. Then there's quite a few questions on where actually to start if you want to learn a little bit more about social sciences. And that's really quite 3 or 4 questions I can see here that are asking what would you recommend as the first step to get into this and learn more about it?
Well, there are different ways. It depends on what kind of person you are. What I could really recommend are the social sciences study at Fernuni Hagen in Germany for all the German speakers. That's quite a good way to start. They offer a broad collection of topics in that field. Something else that I really like is there are some short, compact books by Stefan Kühl and by Fritz Simon, who offers very interesting introductions into the field of social sciences. A number of them are from Stefan Kühl. Nearly all books are available for free in English too. All these they are called very short introduction into, and then managing self-organization, lateral leadership, and so on. Well, there are some very cool podcasts around. One of the best is the Soziopod by Patrick Breitenbach. He's really a great pod host. Another one is a German speaking one, Der ganz formale Wahnsinn. It's quite a cool podcast about organizational theory, but unfortunately only in German. Maybe they will translate it someday because that's really valuable content that they share.
Could you put those on your slide?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I'll
great.
do that when I share the slides. Thank you for the reminder.
And I think that's a good ending point. We've got a few more questions, but Gerrit is, of course, available for a chat later on. Thanks a lot.